Tonight, Communications Minister Esla Owusu clashed with minority members on Public Accounts Committee over allegations that government is abusing executive instruments, allowing it to gather personal mobile telecommunication data for the COVID-19 fight.
Another body can access the data of individuals without consulting you?
Yes. Every step is taken to ensure that full compliance with the law is adhered to.
We trust that that assurance is really assuring.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not quite sure about that.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Gasem Cement, the nation builder, and Vodafone. The future is exciting. Ready. Communications Minister Esla Owusu has tonight clashed with minority members on the Public Accounts Committee over allegations that government is abusing the executive instrument that allows it to gather personal mobile telecommunications data for the COVID-19 fight. Ningo Pram MP Samuel George claims data outside what is required for the COVID-19 fight is being gathered by government for political purposes. The EI-63 was issued by the President about 6 months ago under the imposition of Restriction Act to help government contact trace suspected COVID-19 patients. At the sitting of the Public Accounts Committee today, the Data Protection Commission said it is working with some state agencies to prevent the abuse of rights and privacy of customers. Now, listen to the exchange between the head of the Data Protection Commission, the chairperson of PAC, and the Communications Minister.
Honorable Chair, under emergencies and for reasons of national security and the vital interest of the majority of the data subjects, there are exemptions that apply that allows some entities to carry on with the work and then retrospectively consult the Commission, especially in a situation like the pandemic.
Is that what the act that established the DPC says?
The exemptions apply, yes. It's listed.
The exemptions are there?
Yes. Please.
That in an emergency situation, another body can access the data of individuals without consulting you?
For national security and the well-being of the general public, yes.
I'm also saying the same thing.
Yes.
They can do so without consulting you?
It doesn't mean that they can carry on forever without consulting the Commission.
But they can do so without consulting, whether it's a day or two,
yes,
they can do so without consulting you.
Yes.
So how am I sure that you are there protecting my interests? So, Honorable Minister, you are the Minister and NCA is directly under you. They are the implementers of the EI-63. Are you aware if they do so and reporting to the Data Protection Commission?
Mr. Chairman, the Ministry of Communications also exercises oversight responsibility over the Data Protection Commission as well. And all our agencies act in full conformity with all the laws of the land. And insofar as it extends to the protection of personal data, every step is taken to ensure that no untoward activities are conducted in that respect. And I can understand that people will be concerned that some actions may be taken that might flout their personal data, but I can give this assurance that insofar as these agencies work in accordance with the law, every step is taken to ensure that full compliance with the law is adhered to in all the actions that they take. And that extends to protection of individual rights and liberties as permitted by law.
We take the assurance from you, and we trust that that assurance is really assuring.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not quite sure about that. I'm not just a member of Parliament, but a Minister of State. And I know what the import of giving assurances to the committees, the Honourable House is. So I would seek clarification from you on the last statement that you made. You've asked the question, I have given you the assurance. You seem to have some doubt about the assurance that I have given. So I would also seek some clarification from you on that, since this is the House of Representatives.
I'm only trusting what you said. I'm trying to comfort myself that it's really assuring.
Well, I don't know. I cannot I can only...
The explanation you asked for me is what I'm giving you.
I can only give the information as I have it and put the facts that I know on the record. But if certain comments are made that may seem to suggest that there may be some doubt as to whether or not the assurances I'm giving are right or not, then I also need to insist that you put it on record that what I have said is the facts that I have at my disposal. And that's all that I can do in response to questions put by this Honorable House. Thank you.
Well, immediately after the sitting ended, the media spoke to Mr. Sam George, my colleague Joseph Gakpo, asked him a few questions about whether the minority has suspicions. In fact, he says that government is accessing this data, your mobile data, illegally. He wants the EI-63 revoked.
My question was very simple, that the Data Protection Commission, which is appearing before Parliament, Public Accounts Committee today, have a responsibility to protect the privacy rights of citizens. I wanted to find out if the implementing agencies under the Ministry of Communications and any other agencies that are implementing the EI-63, if the DPC was doing its job of protecting the rights of the citizens. You realize that they could not give us a definite answer. In fact, the Executive Director made the point that they were not working with all the implementers of EI-63. That should be a source of worry for us, that clearly some state agencies have access to our data that are not under the supervision of the Data Protection Commission. 1. 2, the whole formulation of EI-63 is problematic, because in establishing EI-63, the government takes solace in Article 18.2 of the Constitution and Section 100 of the Electronic Communications Act, Act 775, and basically say that the President has the power to give directives on the basis of national security or law enforcement. However, if you read Section 100 completely, it says that the President has the power to give such directive on the basis of law enforcement and national security with respect to a user. The operative phrase there or word there, pronoun there is a user. So when you have EI-63, that then gives power to a state agency under the direction of the President to gain access to all users' data. That is not what the Constitution says. That is not what the Act says. So at the end of the day, you realize that EI-63 is an affront to the Constitution and the Act of Parliament.
The Communications Minister says she can be trusted, and for that matter, they can be trusted that they are ensuring the adequate protection of people's data and avoiding a case of abuse. It was a long back and forth with Chairman James Kushabeji. You don't find the assurance you are sharing now? Is that the sense I'm getting?
The assurance should be the fact that she's telling us that the government has suspended EI-63 because the reasons for implementing EI-63 are no longer tenable.
The Commission couldn't tell. What information do you have in terms of whether EI-63 is still under implementation?
EI-63 is still actively being implemented by this government. The government is still gaining access to citizens' data, even though it claimed that it needed EI-63 at the height of the pandemic to do contact tracing. We all know that no real contact tracing happened on the basis of EI-63.
So that's what other purpose do you envisage? Are they still
3 months?
Less
than 3 months. Less than 3 months for an election. Why do you think that the government will want to have unfettered access to the information of every citizen? And don't forget that recently it came to the fore that the government had requested some data from Vodafone and Airtel Tigo, and they had released it. MTN refused to release their data, and that became a back and forth between MTN and the government.
Well, the Communications Minister, Esther Owusu-Okufo, herself has also been addressing the media about these claims. There's a suggestion that the illegal accessing of your data is somehow because of the elections that coming forth on December 7, and some political reason is behind this. She says these claims amount to fanciful fears.
I mean, if somebody has, and the court has giving an apt description of people who create their own fallacy and follow it, that it is fanciful fears. They use this same argument about the common platform, drew their own erroneous conclusions from it, spread fear and panic across the length of this country based on their own illusions, which are not borne out. In fact, Now, I don't understand if somebody goes to a mobile money vendor to transact business and at some stage is found out to be COVID positive. Wouldn't anybody who was around that vendor at the time want to know whether or not he was also present and in close proximity to that person? Now we're all wearing masks, but at the height of the pandemic, none of us were. And so you could have been exposed inadvertently. So what the law is requiring is for the merchant codes of those who are using mobile money to be also included in the information that EI63 is collecting. How is that information going to help anybody's political campaign? How? So some people with diabolical minds and devious minds have sat there and conjured up all kinds of fanciful scenarios and assumed that everybody thinks like them. We are focused on fighting this pandemic with science and data. That's our focus.
He makes a point that for him,
please, I do not want to...
contact tracing is still happening, and that it's about time the president pulled brakes on the continuous operationalization of the EI63.
Has the pandemic stopped in Ghana? Have we stopped reporting new cases in this country? Have people stopped getting the virus in this country? How can anybody sit there and say no contact tracing is happening? Once this pandemic persists, and nobody knows when we're going to be out of the woods, even countries which thought that they had seen the worst of the pandemic have seen a resurgence in cases. So should we relax and go to sleep and say that Ghana, we are okay, COVID is no longer a problem, so let's dismantle all the systems that we put in place to protect us and wait till another wave hits before we wake up and reimpose these? I mean, I'm sure that people are in a hurry to get back to their normal lives. Then let me use this medium to sound another note of caution that let's continue to abide by the protocols put in place by the government for our individual and collective security. If you listen to people like the people you've been talking to, I don't even want to mention their names, we will be lulled into a false sense of security and think that Ghana is over the worst. And maybe they are hoping that we'll go along that line, relax, and then before the election, there's another wave of infections so that they can use it to do their politics. We are determined to protect Ghanaian lives and Ghanaian livelihoods. And we will do whatever it takes to ensure that we can all eventually go about our normal business, knowing that this pandemic is truly behind us. We are not there yet. And we will continue to err on the side of caution and put in place the measures that will secure our collective and individual future, and continue to urge all Ghanaians to continue washing their hands, wearing their face masks, using sanitizers, and exercising social and physical distancing, because we are not over the pandemic yet. I'm sure the NDC would love us to prematurely announce that we're fine, and then pray and hope that another wave of the pandemic hits before the elections, so they can do political capital, make political capital out of that. I say, Tofiakwa.
Thank you.
Joining me right now on the telephone line is Sam George, who raised the issues on the Public Accounts Committee. Is on the telephone line with me right now. Thank you, sir, for your time here on Top Story. Two quick issues that the Communications Minister just clarified. On your first concern that you believe that the executive instrument itself should be revoked. She argues quite strongly that the reasons why that EI was formulated in the first place still are very live today and justifies the continued existence of this particular act. Isn't she right, though? Because the coronavirus pandemic is by no stretch of imagination gone away.
A very good evening to you and your listeners. The point must be made here is that my question I asked of the Data Protection Commission today had absolutely no malice intended. It was meant to be a public interest question, and then the minister got involved when the executive secretary of the DPC was struggling to answer. Let's establish one thing. Saying that you have a legal reason to continue an illegality does not make the original illegality legal. Telling us that COVID exists, and because COVID still is around, the continued enforcement of EI 63 is necessary, when EI 63 itself is an illegality, is neither here nor there.
Yeah, I mean, but that can only be determined by the Supreme Court, because you're talking about constitutional issues here. There hasn't been that determination yet.
Evans, you've kept me on the phone line for 15 minutes listening to sound bites. Allow me to make a point, please. If you look at the EI 63, it derives its constitutional and legal powers from Article 18.2 of the Constitution and Section 100 of the Electronic Communications Act, Act 775. Section 18.2 says that we must take actions in the public health interest. But Section 100 of Act 772 actually empowers the President to issue directives that set aside the rights and liberties of citizens in the communication sector on the basis of law enforcement and national security. But the word that is used, or the phrase that is used in Section 100, is a user of telecommunication services. Now, EI 63 is not referencing a user. It is referencing all users. And that's where the problem is. What the EI 63 or Section 100 of the Electronic Communications Act seeks to do is where the state has credible suspicion that an individual is making use of the telecommunication system for anything that puts us at risk for law enforcement or national security reasons. The president may direct an intrusion of the privacy of that citizen. So take, for example, a terrorist has come through your country and we've picked up his trail, and you want to pick up his geolocation data. That is why it says a user. EI 63 is open to every user's data, and that's where the problem is. The next point that I seek to make.
Yeah, but I mean, just before you move on, so the question I asked earlier, this EI has been in existence for months. You remember Parliament, you're raising constitutional issues, etc. It comes back to the question. Only the Supreme Court can make a categorical pronouncement on the legality or otherwise, or constitutionality of this. You haven't taken this thing up, have you?
I have asked a question in Parliament, and it's been 5 months. Mr. Speaker has not admitted my question yet.
But you have another recourse, don't you?
Well, as a member of Parliament, my first option of recourse is to ask a question in Parliament. I'm still waiting for the Speaker to admit my question. And that's why when today Mr. Speaker's committee was meeting, and I'm a member of that committee, I raised the issue. And so I'm using one of the recourses available to me to bring government to answer on its questions, and the minister has failed to address the issues. Because you see, the issue that must be established there, Evans, is that look, I am not saying that technology should not be employed in the fight against COVID. In fact, technology has helped in countries like South Korea. What you need to do if you are implementing an EI is not to do an EI that says that you have access to all the information of all citizens. It must be relative to anybody who tests positive for COVID. Because, Evans, I have so far done 5 different COVID tests since COVID came into Ghana, and thankfully I have been negative in all. There is no business of the government checking my, or intruding in my privacy, or breaching my privacy rights, because I am not COVID positive. Every individual who has been COVID positive would most likely have gotten infected over a 14-day period. The CDRs and the metadata of every active phone user is kept for at least 90 days by the telcos. So if an individual tests positive, then you activate the EI and then do a back trace of where that individual has been.
But Evans, tell me how my mobile financial records helps the minister with fighting COVID. I heard an explanation she sought to give, and Evans, that is laughable. It is not true, and it is not correct. And I'm sure, Evans, you can't remember the last time you went to a mobile money vendor, because I believe you have connected your mobile money wallet to your bank account, and so you are able to do transactions across board. If that is the case, you have no business going to a mobile money vendor. So does it mean that the minister's application of technology is limited to tracking people, only people who go to mobile money vendors? The ministers of state who contracted COVID, did they go to mobile money vendors? So that argument is mute, because you see, when you want to track anybody who has gone to a mobile money vendor, you don't need a person's financial details. What you need is the person's geolocation metadata, that is what you use to find the person.
But here's the question. I mean, you said that. I mean, clearly the issues are still pretty live for you because of the legal questions there. You said your question has stood for what, 5 months? Yes. Hasn't been admitted by the speaker. Question is, what else you intend to do about this? The minister had come. He's given her answers. The law is still existing. You still have legal questions. Are you going to pursue this beyond what you've already done, which hasn't been admitted and it stood for 5 months?
Well, that's an option that's available to me. I'm taking the options available to me step by step. First one, as a member of parliament, was to table a further question. I've done that. I'm still waiting for Mr. Speaker's response. Thankfully, I serve on the Public Accounts Committee also. She appeared there. The rules of the House allowed me to ask a public interest question. Her answers did not assuage the issues that I have raised. There is also the option of going to the courts. The courts are on break at the moment. When the legal holiday is over, we'll look at it.
I also heard you in the interview with my colleague Joseph Gakpo suggest that asked a question why we think this data has been collected with less than 3 months on election. That is a suggestion there that this, whatever data you believe is being collected by government, has been collected for political purposes. I mean, that has no basis, has it?
That's a logical thing to think.
Yeah, but that is pure conjecture.
It's not conjecture.
What is it?
It is wisdom. It's common sense.
How is that? I mean, just because you're approaching an election, everything government does has some political motive behind it.
It's common sense. It's common sense because I've just established for you that the government accessing your financial details under the guise of fighting COVID is it's the biggest argument I've ever heard anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. That they're accessing the financial transaction records of all citizens in the country because they're fighting COVID. The ministers of state, who are members of parliament, who sit in the august house of parliament, the ministry's COVID tracker app could not track and identify contacts they made in parliament, even when they got infected. So what are they tracking? So if truly parliament is one of the three arms of government, the number 3 citizen of the land, the Speaker of Parliament, is in parliament. We're only 275 MPs, and whether you like MPs or not, they are high value targets in this country. They're people of great importance to the state. Out of this 275, 3 to 4 members of parliament and about 12 members of the parliamentary service staff got infected with COVID. And our novel system that the minister tells us is using our financial records to track our movements could not identify the contacts amongst 275 MPs that the 4 MPs got in touch with. And you want to tell me that tracker app is using financial record to track people in the OT region or in Choco or in Lepouna, my constituency? That's why I said it is common sense.
That because your explanations, you believe the only reason that this could be is political. I mean, again, what I
have not used the word only reason.
Yeah, I mean, but
it is a plausible reason.
Okay,
it's a common sense reason.
My question is, what possible benefit is there in doing that to the government?
You should possibly be asking those who are
No, but you are alleging that that's what's happening as wisdom. I mean, so what's the wisdom in collecting the data? What purpose would it serve?
There's a lot that could be mined from personal data. If I pick your mobile phone up today or your laptop today, the kind of information about you that I can pick up and use for all kinds of things are wide and varied. But you see, the point I'm making here is that shouldn't you be worried that as we're talking digitization, we have an agency set up by an act of parliament, the Data Protection Commission. That agency ought to ensure that your privacy as a citizen is protected. And under oath, before Mr. Speaker's committee today, the Executive Secretary stated categorically that the Data Protection Commission is not ensuring that all the agencies of states, and it is not one agency of states, there are multiple agencies of states that are accessing this data. That was established in today's meeting. And that some of those agencies of states have not come under the purview of the Data Protection Commission. Why are some agencies of states subjecting themselves and others are not subjecting themselves to the purview of the Data Protection Commission? To ensure that your rights have not been infringed. And you think it shouldn't be a cause of worry?
Well, I'm grateful, Sam George, member of the PAC, obviously raises issue, led to the exchange between the Communications Minister and the Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee today on the allegations and suggestions that your data may be accessed by government illegally. We've had the Communications Minister say that isn't true. This is a subject that, of course, had come up before PAC, and we keep to watch this. We watch this space pretty closely. Of course, isn't it amazing when your network cares about you so much, so that they do amazing things for you? You guessed it. I'm talking about the Vodafone Cash dropping all charges when you send money to all networks. Yes, you heard it right. It costs nothing. Absolutely nothing when you send money via Vodafone Cash to all networks. Just send any amount as many times as you want to any network and pay zero charges on the money sent. So go ahead, make payments, show your love, make contributions, send money all you want via Vodafone Cash to all networks for free. Dial *110# to send cash for free. Ready. On Newsnight in just under 2 minutes, the Ghana Exim Bank has a statement out tonight admitting, of course, that they've engaged Shatawale and Ejako to help them promote their business and made in Ghana products, but they dismissed suggestions that they paid Shatawale 2 million cedis, and this is coming the day when the Public Accounts Committee declared that it will be probing the circumstances under which the monies were paid to Shatawale and Ejako. We have details for you here on Newsnight. Stay with me.